News networks want their talent to interact with their viewers. They want to feel like they can trust them. All of that is part of commenting on their comments, liking their posts. It's all part of it now. Nowadays, when you talk about an entertainment story, you're also talking about a technology story. It's a distribution story and a capital allocation story.
Hollywood's biggest competition isn't another movie studio anymore. It's your phone. Think about it. One swipe and you're watching Netflix. Another swipe and you're on YouTube. Another swipe and you're getting your news on TikTok. The battle isn't just for ratings anymore, it's for attention. And right now, billions of dollars are chasing it. Welcome to the Markets and Leaders podcast. I'm your host, Lyndsay Malchuk. My guest today, though, has interviewed some of Hollywood's biggest stars, spent years behind the scenes in television, and probably knows where more industry skeletons are buried than just about anyone I could have invited onto the podcast. The good news? He's agreed to tell us just a little bit of some of them. Brian Balthazar, welcome. I'm so happy to have you here. This is so exciting.
Thank you. I love this. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Now, before we do get into the business of Hollywood, I have to ask you something selfishly because I'm genuinely curious here. You've interviewed so many incredible people over the years. Who completely surprised you? Not necessarily like the biggest star, but the person you walked away from thinking, I did not expect that.
I will say the first one that comes to mind actually is Rob Reiner, because obviously we just lost Rob Reiner recently.
Yes.
And it turns out I interviewed him more than 10 years ago, and I never posted the interview. It was sitting on a digital card. It just turned out that the platform I was working for, it was a weird story, but it never got posted. And it was sitting in a gym bag for 10 years, and I found it a month before he passed away. In that particular, on that like data card was an interview with Diane Keaton and Rob Reiner. And I played that interview back, and it was like I was there all over again. And I remember going in there being intimidated because he's a legend. He's an icon, incredible filmmaker. And I remember, and that video played out in front of me as this man who is so down to earth, so delightfully self-deprecating, so warm. And I really felt that he was connecting with me in a way that, that doesn't always happen in interviews. Sometimes you really sit there, as you know, you've interviewed countless people yourself. And sometimes you feel like, oh, there's a little bit of an invisible wall, particularly with celebrities. Sometimes there's a guardedness.
Mm-hmm.
Not
CEOs
him.
are the same.
Not at all. And then there were some interviews that I thought, wow, I really, they've done an amazing job at making me feel like we're friends and I want to be their friend. And sometimes it has happened that I've become their friends. But, but I think that's the one that really sticks out the most with me because he was everything and more I could have hoped for him to be.
Beautiful. So beautiful. That's where I want to start because that's the Hollywood everybody sees. They see the red carpets, they see the big personalities, they see the celebrities and the premieres. But, I've always been much more interested in what happens after the camera stops rolling. So when I look at Hollywood, I don't just see entertainment anymore. I see one of the most fascinating businesses in the world. It's an industry that's constantly reinventing itself, constantly taking risks, constantly trying to predict what people are going to want next. And in a lot of ways, Brian, it's living through the same disruption that almost every industry is facing right now. Only it's just happening under a very different and very bright spotlight. So let me ask you this question. I think everybody's wondering here. Is Hollywood actually in trouble, or does it just look that way from the outside?
I think depending on the company, for some companies, the answer is yes.
Right.
However, I think you really touched on something in setting this question up because you were saying that it's so similar to other businesses. And the truth is, nowadays, when you talk about an entertainment story, you're also talking about a technology story. It's a distribution story and a capital allocation story. All of those things are part of the business of show business.
100%.
And especially now where how we watch content, and you mentioned that in your introduction about swiping on your phone, everything about how we consume content has changed. And It's happening so quickly that many of these companies and some of the topics that we'll likely talk about today
Yeah.
are happening so quickly that they're racing and scrambling to catch up and hopefully get ahead of it. I don't think there is a getting ahead of it now. It's like kind of just catching up as we speak.
Yeah.
But I think some of the startling part of that is there are some companies, some studios that are not going to survive the change in which studios in particular are commissioning their content. They're getting less content and bigger projects. That's why we see so many sequels and big franchises, superheroes all the time. Little independent films, while we've seen some incredible successes lately, like Obsession being one of them, there's still a lot of those companies that are struggling and will continue to struggle as these big studios figure out what they are and what they're going to be in the future.
Well, every week, it does feel like we're reading a completely different story. One day theaters are back, the next day they're finished. Streaming was supposed to save everything, and now we're hearing about subscription fatigue. I mean, every company right now seems to be searching for the next big hit while also trying to figure out what businesses they're actually in. So from your perspective, Brian, what's the biggest misconception people have right now about Hollywood?
Okay. So I think a lot of people have the perception that Hollywood currently is anti-creativity, right? Because you see so many sequels, prequels, franchises,
So
IP.
true.
I don't think it's that deep for a lot of studios. I think they're simply trying to, it's a business. They're trying to make money, and they believe that the biggest and easiest way, the least risky way to make that money is to invest in big projects with existing IP, with existing celebrities. There's a reason that when you see an animated film, right, you don't see the actors' faces, but there's a reason you see big actors playing those voice roles.
Mm-hmm.
That's because they need people to find out about the film, and the way to do that is to have Tom Hanks voice a role. So they go on the morning show. You can't have a morning show is not going to book an unknown talent on their morning show, right?
Right.
So there's all these strategic things happening. That being said, okay, so I just came out saying Hollywood is not creativity averse or against creativity. That being said, creativity is taking a hit. Original ideas have been taking a hit. I'll give you one more caveat to that, though.
Yeah.
The viewer, the buyer, they will tell us. They will tell studios what they want. And that's why we've seen an original story like Obsession, the movie, the independently produced thriller that I think costs... It's already made, over $100 million worldwide, and I think it costs less than $5 million. I wish I knew the exact number, but let's just say it cost pennies on the dollar for what it makes. And then you have a movie like even Steven Spielberg, a big box office draw. He made his most recent movie is an original story. He came up with the idea himself, and he co-wrote it with his screenwriter. David Koepp is his last name. And that one, Disclosure Day, has also been a great success. So it's just, I think the issue is independent ideas, new ideas are a little bit harder to get through. But we are in an incredible time of transition, and we're going to see these things constantly changing. This summer, I feel like we're seeing a little bit of a pivot to more original content and less IP-driven content, but it is changing so quickly that it's anybody's guess what we'll be saying a year from now about that.
That's crazy. Yeah. I think that Obsession, I think it was the Obsession one. It cost like $750,000 to make. It was
That's
like
what I
ridiculous.
thought. Yeah, I knew it was like some insanely inexpensive,
super low
cost for that.
Like not
film.
even a mil.
And the beauty
Like,
of
that's
it is it's
wild.
a story. Story wins, right? A great story will prevail. Hopefully.
I mean, that right there, if we're looking capital markets, that is making bank. Holy cow.
Yeah.
Now, what's interesting listening to you, because what I'm hearing isn't necessarily just an entertainment story. It's a story about disruption, really. Yeah. I mean, every industry is trying to answer the same question. How do you stay relevant when consumer behavior changes faster than your business can?
Right.
So when did you first realize that Hollywood was fundamentally changing? Was there a moment or a conversation or a trend where you thought, this industry is never going to look the same again?
I think a couple things come to mind. One was when we started to see film hubs occurring outside of Hollywood, like Atlanta.
Yes.
I think when you see people fleeing Hollywood to do programming and filmmaking in other areas of the country and other parts of the world, Ireland, for example, is a hub for big shiny floor game shows, because in one case, Rob Lowe said that he hosted a show, I believe it was The Floor, where they flew him and the contestants and some of the audience out to Ireland because it was cheaper to do it there than it was to shoot it across the street from where he was in LA. So that was where we were first seeing, okay, this is a problem. This is becoming a problem. The other thing I thought was very interesting is when the pandemic hit in 2020, there was always a time, and this was, I was at the time with Warner Brothers Discovery, and I was also just about to launch into a production company during that same year that both of those things happened.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a time when our networks were afraid to show movies with subtitles on their screen. I don't want to say afraid. They were less likely to do it because they thought people aren't going to watch that. Yeah. We didn't even have shows with people with like accents generally outside of the United States on some channels because they thought American viewers wouldn't watch it. Then the pandemic hit and there were no options other than to click on a movie that was popular in another country. And the truth is people watch them because, again, story prevails, right? If it's a great story, true. This is the number one movie in Germany. It's a suspense thriller. Like, what? Maybe I'll check it out. And we found that we were much more open to viewers watching something with subtitles. I watch subtitles on English-speaking movies.
We all have subtitles on. I think maybe it's an age thing too. But
I always have them on. I never went back.
So they're just naturally there now.
That has actually fueled how these streaming platforms are stocking their inventory now. They're acquiring content much more inexpensively because they can get a second run of a show that maybe they dubbed the voices over on or do subtitles on. Dubbing over is now becoming more common than, say, just running it with subtitles. But they're finding that we as viewers are much more open to content presented in various ways. And so that has changed how much they needed to commission in the United States as a result too. So it's shaping how networks and streaming platforms buy their content.
Do you remember that film Rumble in the Bronx? I think that was like a trailblazing film with the dubbing over. And I still remember, who was it Jackie Chan in it? I don't remember who was in it, but they were like,
I can't remember either.
Their mouth was one way, but the voice was another way. But how do you think, if we look back at that, how do you think that film would have done if it was subtitles instead? Do you think it would have been as successful? I mean, that was a legendary film.
Probably wouldn't have done as well subtitled. And mind you, that was a theatrical release that you're referring to at the time, right? So I think when we were stuck at home, we were kind of like we were running out of options. There were no new movies were coming out anytime soon, right? so you're like, well, I'll give this a try. Also, a lot of people weren't working, so this changed our viewing habits in a very significant way. And I do think the long-term impact of that remains. And so it's hard to say. I still think in a theater, it's still harder to sell people on subtitled films. Although the reason that these usually are independent film houses is because the theaters are smaller. The audience size is smaller. So that trend still continues, but it has changed the way streaming platforms have commissioned content from other countries to broaden out their library. And one of the things that's happened with Netflix and many of the other platforms is for many, many years, it was about building that library, having the most stuff. Discovery is a great example of that. Like, let's have the biggest library. It was a scramble to have the biggest content library.
Totally.
Now that's shifting a little bit now in favor of return on investment over scale.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things that's fascinated me is that Hollywood isn't just competing with Hollywood anymore. I mean, you said it right there. A movie isn't competing with another movie. It's competing with other platforms altogether. TikTok, YouTube, podcasts, sports, Instagram, even like video games, group chats, and honestly, just life. It's just competing with life. Did the industry see that shift coming, or did everyone wake up one day and just realize we're competing against each other far more than we realize, or we're not competing against each other, we're competing against other platforms?
I do think it was like seeing a ship far off in the distance. It's coming, and it looks like it's coming slowly, but then suddenly like, oh wait, it's getting bigger. I see it now. I can see the wake. I think the way in which video games have become more and more realistic looking and looking more like films themselves was a cue. Now, whether or not everyone saw it or heard those signs or saw those signs or heard those cues, it's hard to know. But I do think, a company like Microsoft Xbox that is very much the way in which they behaved over recent years in buying more than 30 game studios to create some of their games. That's not unlike, you know, the network model. Like, they've been trying to acquire the most content, to be the place that
The
everyone goes
place.
because they know they'll find it there. So
Yeah.
there has been a trend of that. They're very much mirror images of each other in the which they've tried to acquire, make more content, acquire companies, win market share. All of those things are kind of common among companies like Roku, Netflix,
Oh my
Xbox. They're
gosh.
all
Yeah.
doing the same kind of thing. And now, as we face all these mergers, it will remain to be seen how they take what they have now, how they economize on it. Is it going to be a story of cutbacks in economy, or will it be a content growth? It'll be interesting to see what they do next. That's going to be what everyone's watching. Anyone who's invested in any of these companies.
I may be aging myself a little bit, but growing up, I mean, if you wanted to make it, you dreamed of it in Hollywood. Today, millions of kids, they dream about becoming YouTubers. Like, my son is like, honey, what do you want to be when you grow up? And he's like, I want to be a YouTuber. That's never going to happen.
It's true.
So some
Well,
of the
and
biggest,
it's funny because YouTube is the largest platform because it just
really
keeps
is.
generating user-generating content. Its library is constantly, as we speak right now, think how many thousands of people are uploading content. So it is
100%.
by leaps and bounds the largest, network, if you will, and now that we have, movies running on there, we have comedy specials on there, we have user-generated content. I remember as a network executive, there have been times that we would reach out to someone who had a huge social media following to see if they wanted to discuss having a television show. Some of them didn't want it because it's too much work for them and not enough
100%.
return, not enough
Yeah.
money, because they
Yeah.
make more money posting on YouTube or
On
posting on
YouTube.
TikTok
Yeah,
than
some
they
of the
would
biggest
if they were to
names
get
in
a television show.
entertainment.
Because when you get a first season of a television show on a cable network, you're not making that much money, particularly an unscripted show. I'm not talking about a
Really?
scripted show necessarily.
Right.
But they're making a lot of money doing this. The question is it sustainable for many of them? A lot. We're still at a stage where we haven't seen many of the young TikTok stars. I said TikTok. We're still at a stage where we have not seen a lot of internet stars in their decades later. Like, what is it going to look like for that hot 20-year-old TikTok star? What's it going to look like when they're 50, 60, 70? Do they not need the money anymore? Will audiences still care? Will they still want to do it? So it's still very young, the life of an internet celebrity. We're still going to see how that shakes down in a lot of ways.
Do you think that Hollywood underestimated the creator economy, or did it simply happen faster than anyone just imagined?
I think both. Right. I think it's interesting because every once in a while you'll hear about a TikToker or a Instagram star, social media star getting a role on a film. Noah Beck, I believe it is, who's going to be on the Baywatch reboot.
No.
You hear them once in a while, but you don't. What did you say?
There's a Baywatch reboot
Oh,
coming?
yes, of course. Because the one thing
Oh,
that never
gosh.
changes is sex sells, right? You put a bunch of people that are, good-looking people on the beach in swimsuits, people are going to watch. The problem is now you don't have to look far to get someone in a swimsuit. They're on Instagram already.
They all want to be it. Who's the next Pamela Anderson character then? I mean, she just turned, 60 or 59 or yesterday, I think it was her birthday.
Yeah, recently, yeah.
I wonder who that's going to be. I actually sat with her on an airplane back from Germany not that long ago, and the most lovely human being in the
I love
world.
hearing that. I believe it too. It's coming through. I feel like we're finally seeing the most authentic version of who she is.
100%. She's so gentle, and we ended up kind of looking out for each other. So if one of us fell asleep, we'd tell the crew there what the other one wanted. She was so sweet. She was so sweet.
So nice. I love
it's nice
that.
to hear the things. What's fascinating though about all the changes in this entire business model in Hollywood is the relationships between audiences and creators is direct now. So people don't just consume content, they feel like they know the people creating it now. And that's a completely different kind of loyalty. Do you think that's changed the way traditional media thinks about building audiences then?
I do, because I think nowadays you'll see far more film and television actors with social media accounts making that as much a part of their day-to-day
Wholeheartedly.
as their regular work, because because there's so many places to get a movie or a TV show, or, it's so hard, discovery, as they call it, and I don't mean the company discovery, I mean discovering content, the act of discovery, finding out where something is, how to watch it. And is really difficult. It's all over the place. So actors in particular are realizing they have to do everything they can. That's why you see actors doing commercials. There was a time that a movie star wouldn't do a commercial.
Never.
Or a movie star wouldn't do a game show. Now they're doing everything because relevance is being seen. And if you're going to be seen, you're going to have to show up in a bunch of places because there are far too many. So social media is a big part of that as well. I think there was a time when probably like someone like Jennifer Lopez wouldn't be a huge active social media personality. She would just be able to make movies and do just that. But I think nowadays that is part of it. News networks want their talent to interact with their viewers. They want to feel like they can trust them. All of that is part of commenting on their comments, liking their posts. It's all part of it now. And it's a very time-consuming practice, truthfully.
It is.
It's a lot to do that.
Full-time job. 100%. You make a good point there that it's all about relevancy. Just like in capital markets, though, Brian, you have to tell a story, and every decision always starts with some sort of emotion. Good, bad, ugly, pretty. It doesn't matter what it is. And when we're in an economy now, the way we are, where things are very choosy, where capital is coming and going very fast, and they're very choosy where that capital is going, an audience is the same thing, right? If they don't believe your story, if they don't hear your story, they're not going to relate to you. And so it's really great to hear that production companies now and studios and all the things, they want them to get out there and show that they're real. They're not robots. And I get it a lot for me too. It's like, you have to stay I'm not a robot. I'm a person, and you probably have it too. So showing a little bit of personality, I think it goes a lot further than just being so polished all the time.
I agree. And we've seen other scenarios where when you have like a legal battle taking place on a public forum, like Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni.
Yes.
They're limited in what they can say on social about that case because they're in the throes of it.
Yeah.
However, viewers are acting as jury.
They're invested
without their consent, so that it's a very tricky and slippery slope for a lot of people who are in the public forum to 100%. Deal with. And it's, so I do think, to your point though, legal issues aside, you are going to generate far more of a fan base as a celebrity, an actor, or a performer if you are truly being your authentic self in a way that people like. And sometimes someone's authentically not likable. Like, let's be honest. Sometimes you see someone online,
that's just how it is.
and they're authentically rude to people, or authentically cool, or cold. And that to your point, people want, when they're online, to feel something. The things that get
100%.
shared are something that makes you feel like maybe it makes you laugh, maybe it makes you mad, maybe it makes you sad. Those are the things that get shared,
matter.
and therefore those things that get shared are what gets seen. So it's a jungle out there, truly, to navigate. But when it's done well and when it's done right, it can be incredibly lucrative for the people who do it.
Okay, I'm going to flip over to a topic that is quite controversial in the media as a whole industry. And I want to talk about artificial intelligence. And I want to talk about it because I don't think there's another industry where this conversation is quite this emotional.
Right.
I mean, I've interviewed executives across mining, finance, technology, and the manufacturing, and almost everyone talks about AI as a productivity story. Hollywood feels very different. Media in general feels very different. Here we're talking about creativity, ownership, identity, and livelihoods. So this isn't simply a conversation about software anymore. It's a conversation about the future of human connectivity. And that's where that whole social media aspect comes in. How would you describe the conversations happening inside Hollywood right now around that topic?
I think right now there's, depending on the field in which, the point of view in which you're discussing it. Now, if you're an actor, obviously there's concern about their work being used as the data for someone else's performance, some artificial person's performance. I can understand that completely, why that's incredibly concerning. If you're a studio, you're talking about how much AI, and these conversations are being had at networks behind closed doors, because there's a lot of fear about the backlash of it still. But there is not a network or studio out there that isn't having the conversation about, wait, what can we do to save money? Because let's be honest, they're all trying to save money. And what can we do that is the least threatening to artists? And they're having the conversations. There's no way they're not. And some of them are thinking, well, do we wait a little while? Do we? Here's an example. There are epic movies like War, a documentary about war where they're doing a recreation,
Right.
or uh, a Roman battle, right? Can you do those crowd shots just with AI and then have your actors do the close-ups? Can you have extras that are all AI? I mean, there has always been a bag of tricks the studios have used, but it's never been quite this controversial. Extras in an arena used to be literal dummies. They used to put dummies in the arena and they'd be in the background and mix them in with real people. There was a company that dealt with this. Their business was inflatable extras. They were just inflatable human bodies they would dress and put them in. And so
No way.
that wasn't controversial, right? But there were still
Yeah.
extras that weren't getting paid to be there.
Yeah.
However, now that it's computer generated, and how do they get those images? Are they scanning actors and giving them a one-time fee and then using that image in perpetuity? In some case, that's what the unions like SAG-AFTRA are trying to offset and trying to prevent, because it is really the great unknown right now. Back when the film industry was young and we were transitioning from silent movies to movies with audio, that was controversial. That was very controversial at the time, because silent film actors were concerned. And in some cases, they had every right to be. Some silent film actors did not survive the transition into audio.
Charlie
because
Chaplin.
They frankly didn't have the voice for it. They didn't have the full package for audio.
Right?
And it took a while, but before awards were given to an audio picture. It's hard to even imagine, but it's an interesting example of how technology is initially can sometimes be met with reluctance and then eventually embraced. But there's a lot of steps that happen in between for people to figure it out. And that's what we're dealing right now with AI.
Yeah, there's a lot of capital that's going into AI right now with the infrastructure and with the data centers and everything else. So, it's interesting to hear how it's working on the media front as well. And it really sort of delves into how deep this is really going, for sure. Now, Brian, listening to you, it strikes me that the rest of the business world may actually be able to learn something from Hollywood, actually. I mean, most industries are still focused on what AI can do. Hollywood is already wrestling with what AI should do. And those are two very different conversations. Do you think the industry eventually finds that balance, or are we still in the earliest chapters, like you said, of hurry up and wait?
I think it will continue to be a struggle for some time between acting unions, artist unions, directors unions, and the studios themselves about the economics of it and how that works and protecting artists. I think the one thing that's inevitable is that it is here and that it is not going away.
That's right.
And so it's a runaway train. It's not. The brakes are not going to be pressed on this train.
There's no brakes.
And it is moving so quickly. And what it is going to be very interesting, because it's going to open doors for young filmmakers, young broke animators that can't build a studio in a week, but they'll be able to do something maybe with AI that they would never have had the opportunity to do before.
True.
So some artists are going to benefit from this. Some artists, what we define as an artist, it depends on who you are, right? So some artists who draw with pen and paper aren't necessarily going to look at that artist who's got a laptop and is making an animated film in that way. So it's going to be controversial for a very, very long time. In the same way that people, judge music. They say, oh, you made that on your laptop versus you played the guitar. That's still controversial, but not as much as it once was. These things, we as a society do adapt and adjust and start to accept things, but it takes time. And so I don't even remember what your question was. But I guess the answer is like, I do think in time, these things do start to level off. What we don't know yet is just how far its abilities are going to take us. And that's where a lot of the fear is, I think. A lot of people are afraid of just what it is capable of. And
There's
so
another shift that's impossible really to ignore here too, Brian, and celebrity has changed.
Yeah.
I mean, it used to end with magazine covers and blockbuster films. Today, celebrities are launching companies. They're building brands, investing in businesses, and creating an entire ecosystem around themselves. So fame has
Yeah.
become a platform for entrepreneurship in a way we've really actually never seen before. When did you notice the change in that?
I think my first recognition of that was when young actresses were switching from being the spokesperson for a makeup brand to becoming the makeup brand. I think that
Right?
was one of my first instances where I noticed, oh, this is, and then you saw another one, and then you saw another one. So beauty, I think it was where actresses were saying, they were like, I'm representing this product that makes me feel more beautiful or be more beautiful. And instead of saying it's on the product, then this person says, but I now created it, like, because we look at that person like, well, a lot of that is how great you look. So, that person's like, wait, I'm going to be that brand now. I am the brand. And so they build that up. And then I think with men, I started to notice it with liquor brands. Like we saw
I was going to say
tequila.
Tequila.
We saw, it's so funny. It's just like the gender roles at the time, the perception of, I guess men like liquor, and there's really, it is somewhat limitless. Clothing is another example. Like no longer do I model the clothing. I design the clothing and I sell the clothing. And the truth is, this is about margins and rate of return. Like, why not get a piece instead of why not get a piece of that thing that you're helping sell? And I think that's kind of what started it. But I do think my recollection of it was when it started with beauty brands, seeing that it was no longer about modeling and be the face of the brand. You just be the brand.
You be the brand. Yeah.
Well,
okay, Brian, we've covered everything from Hollywood and streaming to creators, celebrity brands, and AI. What I love about this conversation is that there aren't many easy answers. This industry really actually seems to reinvent itself every 6 months, and separating the hype from what's actually changing this has never been more important.
Yeah.
So having said all of that, here on Markets and Leaders podcast, we aren't all business. We like to throw in a little game to lighten things up here and there. So we're going to play a little game, and this one's called Hype or Here to Stay. Okay? I'm going to throw out a topic, and I want your gut, witty reaction. Is it all hype or is it here to stay? And then afterwards, you can tell me why. Okay?
Okay.
Ready?
Yep.
Movie theaters. Ooh.
Oh, wow. I'm going to say here to stay. I'm just going to say that I do think the number of them may decrease, right?
But they're here to stay.
As we've seen, theaters are trying to make things more of an experience. They're trying to heighten the experience of going to the movies. And I think this is why studios are making bigger, flashier films that theoretically you can only experience in a theater to really fully appreciate their impact. Disclosure Day, I think, was an example of that. That is one. I love staying at home, Lyndsay. Let me tell you.
I do. I know.
I love it.
Although, let's be honest here, it's about the popcorn, because that popcorn is amazing. So I am very guilty. I don't watch many movies. I don't watch TV. It's there for my son, really. But we will DoorDash or Uber Eats popcorn from the movie theater because it's next level.
Yeah. So I'm going to say here to stay with caveats. I think this is where we're going to see that theaters are we're going to see fewer of them, but they're going to have to make it worth their while. And they're trying. They're having photo ops. They're going to have panel discussions in some cities. They have they'll see a screening and then celebrities may show up afterwards. I mean, that's not going to happen everywhere, but that's happening to some degree. Having themed nights, having sing-along nights.
So good.
Wicked, for example, having a night where you can come and sing along. Trying to make it something where it makes it more of an event to go.
Yeah.
So here to stay.
Here to stay. Okay, next one. Award shows.
Ooh. Boy, that leans more towards hype for me. The fact that the Academy Awards are moving to streaming. Eventually, I don't remember what year that's happening. That being said, people like to poo-poo streaming, but streaming is everywhere, so it may in some ways increase the audience. So it might make it more of an interactive experience. I do think we have a lot of award shows. There's a lot of them. I think we probably have too many. So I think
hype.
Okay.
Well, the next one then is streaming. Hype or here to stay?
Here to stay.
Here to stay. That's a pretty simple one, I think, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at, and when I talk, it's not just movies, it's gaming as well. Sony just said they're going to stop making physical discs for some of their games.
Wow.
It's like although I will say, like, record albums went away and now it's kind of like vinyl is back, So
vinyl's
I think, though, streaming is not going away. People love convenience and the fact that you can watch a film anywhere. You can get a signal. Oh, how is that going to go away? That's here to stay.
That's here to stay. Okay, reality television.
Ugh. Sorry.
Tell me how you really feel about this one, Brian.
You know why it's here to stay? Because it's cheap.
Because people
It can be. It's not always cheap. Okay, reality TV can run the gamut. Now, like when you have a show
Drama.
like Love Island isn't cheap. They have to have a villa. They have to fly everyone down. It's not a cheap show. But when you consider reality is a broad base. I mean, you could argue that House Hunters is considered a reality show or an unscripted show as much as a reality show as like The Housewives.
Right.
When you consider that a scripted show can run, $10 million an episode, but an episode of The Housewives, that's not costing $10 million an episode. It's a fraction of that. So the return on that investment is undeniable. And so, yes, here to stay. And then people on YouTube are going to just shoot their own, as they are now. They're just, the fact that they'll be able to edit more easily, the AI will make their graphics for them. That's how all of this is changing the landscape. That people will just do their own reality shows.
People like escaping from their own lives too and just watching mindless television drama. So there we go.
Right.
Okay, next one. Celebrity brands, here to stay or hype?
Here to stay.
Here to stay.
I think the fact, especially for established celebrities, it's harder than ever for a young celebrity to break through now, because for reasons that we kind of discussed already. Now successful celebrity brands, that's the tricky part. There may be fewer of them, but there's always going to be people who are going to just turn it into something, and that's I think that's smart, honestly, because jobs pay less, residuals are still tricky with streamers, so you have to have an income stream, and so go for it.
Go for it. Okay, so the next one then is TikTok.
TikTok. I'm going to say, I don't know that it's here to stay, because I remember a time when everyone was talking about Vine. I remember I do think eventually the platforms do change. So I can't guarantee that it's here to stay.
Yeah, TikTok used to be called Musical.ly. Do you remember that?
Right. Yeah. So and I remember when, I feel like Snapchat was a bigger thing at one time too. I think the younger generation does not want to populate the thing their parents used.
Yeah.
And Facebook is an example of that. Facebook is now considered the older audience.
Yeah.
Because their kids don't want to be on the thing their mom and dad and grandmother and grandfather are on.
Yeah.
So
true.
they decide they want something else. So there's always going to be room for someone to break through and become the next best thing.
Okay, next one. Late night television.
I will say, it's not hype. I think it's hype, unfortunately, and this makes me sad. But the problem, the reason being, we are in the era of anytime television. So you can watch it anytime. I think we're seeing already what has changed at CBS with Colbert being canceled and replaced with a pre-taped show. There'll always be shows on at night that will be considered late, but late night as we know it is probably going to change. I think we're seeing the erosion of live streams already on network television because of the vastness of platforms to watch things.
Yeah.
So it will not be the way we know it now.
That's true. When I think of late night television, I don't just think of like Jimmy Fallon and all the talk shows.
Right.
I think of do you remember Night Court? Do you remember that show?
Yes, right.
When I think late night, I think, Night Court. I don't know.
Right, at least John Larroquette, I think it was. Yeah.
I don't remember. Okay, last one. Superhero movies.
I think, that's
Challenge.
right now. I think we might be in our hype era because we're seeing, the Supergirl movie did not meet box office expectations, although
really
its director and the studio are saying it is going as planned. I do think it's going to die down, and I think the audiences are actually saying so. Like they're actually asking for it to die down a little bit. I think they're going to have to. They've already tried to rethink it. This is the rethinking we're seeing right now with the most recent Superman movie and with the Supergirl movie. And again, these are not terrible numbers. These are still very respectable box office numbers in the long term. The merchandising opportunities, so they're not going away. But the hype of a new superhero movie, people getting excited about a new superhero movie, we've seen it. We've seen the story. So they're going to have to think of something new to get people excited about in the same way that they once did about superhero films.
Okay, I have to admit there were at least a few answers there that actually surprised me. Like, really, honestly, I didn't think reality TV was going to be here to stay. I think that one's going to just start fizzling out. So I was surprised to hear that one for sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'm full of surprises.
Yeah, it's always full of surprises, Brian. I think that's what makes this industry actually really fascinating for me is just when you think you figured this all out, something shifts and consumers' habits change and new platforms emerge like TikTok or anything else, or a completely different business model really just takes off. This is going to bring me to my final question for you. When people watch this episode 5 years from now, what's one thing happening in Hollywood today that they'll wish they'd paid more attention to then?
Ooh. Well, it is so funny about these shows because they are the receipts. 5 years from now, they'll be like, that guy, Brian, he didn't know what he was talking about. Or he did.
Brian?
Maybe he did. Let's see. What is one thing that people wish they had paid more attention to? I think as we talk about, we're right now in a time of lots of mergers. I think, and people are thinking, we're trying to assess whether some of these mergers are a good idea, if they're a bad idea, if Roku was bought for too much money, all that kind of thing. So the truth is I think we won't know the answer to that for 5 years, right? So I think these are long games. All of these things that we're talking about, like even the film industry, we're not talking. The studios already know what their schedule is for next year. So we're really thinking when we talk about all of these things happening in the industry and whether you're going to invest in gaming or you're going to invest in a discovery or you're going to, I think paying attention to what's happening now and how they react to these mergers going through. Is it just going to be about cost cutting or is it going to be about content creation? Can these new companies, these bigger companies survive the cultural changes that happen when you economize? Because it's not just about the product they put out, but like there's a lot of internal politics. So I guess my answer to the question is like, I think maybe we'll wish we pay more attention to not just did it go through, not just the initial like numbers, but what's happening a year from now. What are the stories that are coming out? What are their actual plans, strategic plans to how they will deal with being this new streamlined company and paying attention to that in the year that follows. I think that's the best way I can answer that because this is a great unknown, as we were saying.
I think for on the capital side too, you have to really look at the M&As that are happening. Brian, what are the two biggest M&As that people are talking about right now in the industry?
I would say, well, obviously Warner Brothers Discovery, the Roku, the Roku going to Fox. I think those are the two, because this is also, for Roku, we're seeing, and with Warner Brothers, we're seeing both of them. They want to own more of the journey from content creation to the consumer relationship to distribution. It's not just a content story. It's about owning the advertising platforms. It's about owning the reach. Roku's an amazing story of how that was built and how much reach they have because they're the operating system of content distribution. They're not just like it's not just that they make content. It's about the reach of their operating system and how many homes they're in. And can Fox make sure that the viewers feel like it's still agnostic enough? Like they're not having Fox shoved down their throat. You know what I mean? When they finally are in as part of the Roku family. And then Warner Brothers, I mean, it just feels like I'm kind of ready for it to happen because I feel like we've been talking about it for so long. And maybe it hasn't been that long, but I feel like we're ready to see what happens and how they take all of this vast library and how they allocate it, what networks survive and what ones don't. And I think they'll all survive in some form. A network like HGTV is so valuable and it's got this incredible IP and IP is incredibly valuable. So how will it look in a few years is so fascinating to me. So those are the two that I'm really the most interested in.
It's fascinating because if you look at an industry, even like mining, we'll say, we're seeing a lot of M&A in the mining industry with large cap companies buying into the small caps. And I think that's even crossing over into Hollywood. And, you're seeing those large, massive studio production companies now investing into the smaller ones and doing those M&As. So I think it's across the board. You have to actually really pay attention to who the M&As are happening with and start asking why, because that's going to be the long-term question. It's going to give you some foreshadow into what's coming next. Why are they partnering with them? What do they see that we don't? And now it's time to really listen
And that's what
up.
people are talking about with Xbox. They have 30 or so content production studios, game production studios that they own. And many of them are at risk right now. And so it remains to be seen, it once was, again, we were talking about before, it was a play for having the most. And now that you're trying to streamline and be efficient and economize, is it about having all of the things, or is it having the best things and fewer of them?
Mm-hmm. Fair enough. Well, Brian, this has been such a great conversation and so fun. I think what I enjoyed most was that we never really talk about Hollywood in capital markets all the time. So this has been so great. I'm so excited for you to come back and let's just delve in a little bit more.
Me too. I love being here. Thank you so much for having me, Lyndsay.
So how consumers consume their content, how technology changes behavior, how creativity evolves, and how one industry continues to reinvent itself before the rest of the world catches up. That's exactly why I wanted Brian to come on the show today and just shed some light. Thank you again, and we'll see you soon, Brian.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on The Markets and Leaders. If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to subscribe, because every week we sit down with people just like Brian who are shaping industries, challenging conventional thinking, and helping us better understand the forces changing the world around us. I'm your host, Lyndsay Malchuk, and remember, these are the opinions of our own with possible vested interest in any or all of the companies we may have spoken about. This is not to be used financial advice. Always be sure to speak with your licensed financial advisor and know your own risk tolerances. For a copy of our complete disclaimer, head over to appeton.com. We'll see you next time.